Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Investor More, and today is a day where real estate agents' lives change forever with the new settlement rules going into effect, and this will greatly impact consumers, buyers, and sellers as well. So we're going to talk about the big changes and a lot of the misconceptions out there as well and what really is going to happen. We're going to take a look at Colorado specifically, our new contracts, MLS rules, things like that, and how it will impact sellers and buyers, and if all of these rumors are true or not. Like this rumor, a major settlement could spell an end to 6% real estate commissions. There were never 6% real estate commissions that were standard, right? There's always different types of commissions being charged. As a broker and agent, we've always had different compensation practices and amounts and different things. There was never a standard. It was drilled into my head there was never a standard from the time I began over 20 years ago. So a lot of that is not true, and they didn't even do anything in this settlement to change the amounts of commissions or anything like that either. That was never part of this. That was not part of how this all played out. Now, the other thing that a lot of people are seeing is, I search for this in Google and AI says, as of August 2024, home sellers will no longer be required to pay both their own agent and the buyer's agent. They were never required to do that before. It was always negotiable. So that hasn't really changed. And it even goes on to say, instead, home buyers who want representation will need to pay their own agent separately. This change is due to new rules from National Association of Realtors. That is not true either. The seller can still pay a commission, and we'll show you the forms and different things that show that and how that will come into play. So the big change is that buyers will be required to work or sign an agency agreement with buyer's agents before seeing houses, and the commission amount can't be listed anywhere on MLS, online, in pictures. So really what it's doing is kind of taking away information for the consumers and making things much more complicated. So let's get into the details and show you exactly what's happening. Here's an email I got from NAR just explaining the changes and what we're supposed to do, and I don't know if it's a dig at the settlement or just a mistake on their part, but one of these completely contradicts itself, and we'll talk about that. Just says, hello all, ahead of the August 17th implementation of NAR's practice changes, we want to provide a few reminders of actions that are required to obtain a release of liability and protect your organization from claims related to broker commissions. We recommend all MLS implement practice changes by August 17th. Realtor MLSs, those owned exclusively by one or more realtor member boards, must implement the changes by this date to remain in compliance with NAR policy. So again, all real estate agents are not realtors. So realtors is like a trade group, sort of like a union of realtors, of real estate agents, sorry. So real estate agents can be realtors, but they don't have to be, which is what's so weird about the settlement because it's just for realtors. So if you're not a realtor, I don't know if you have to abide by these, but then it's recommended you do so you don't get in trouble. It's so confusing. But anyway, most MLS systems, which is a multiple listing service, is where houses are listed by agents, are owned by realtor boards. Ours is here in Colorado. We have multiple MLSs in Colorado, but ours in Northern Colorado is, and most are. Now, this is the really interesting part. Offers of compensation are prohibited on MLSs. So that means we can't put on the MLS that the seller is willing to pay a buyer's agent 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, 8%, 50%, whatever it might be. Again, there's never been a set commission. There's never been standard commissions. That's been drilled into my head since I became an agent 20-some years ago. But we are no longer allowed to say what that is on the MLS, on any websites, pretty much anywhere at all. And they've made it very clear you can't try and trick people or put a picture of a percent somewhere in the photos for the listing, like mow a 3% into the yard or put 3 candles in a window. You will get fined and possibly sued if you do that. You also can't make any references to it in the comments. You can't even say there's 3% buyer concessions available, or there's a $5,000 carpet allowance, or there's an assumable loan with a 2% interest rate. You basically are not allowed to have any numbers in the comments regarding any information at all. That might have been a separate email from our MLS telling us that. But basically, and this is what's interesting. So if I continue to read this, offers of compensation will continue to be an option consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals. So they're saying you still can offer compensation. You just can't tell anybody on the MLS or websites or in pictures what it is. So you can do it, you just can't tell people. So you can text, you can have a phone call and let them know what can happen, or you can negotiate it in contracts that way as well. You just can't tell people what it is online, basically. And then it continues, offers of compensation help make home ownership and the benefits of professional representation more accessible to buyers, including first-time home buyers, increase home ownership opportunities for historically underserved groups, and benefit sellers by expanding the potential buyer pool. So what NAR is saying is that offers of compensation are really, really good for home buyers and home sellers. And I agree with that, because the way the system is set up has evolved over time to allow home ownership to increase, to allow buyers to have less costs, to allow sellers to get more money out of their house. Like, the system has evolved because it's worked better. It's kind of like evolution. Species will, get stronger over time, have better instincts, whatever it is, because they learn what works best and what doesn't. Same thing with business, same thing with how the MLS system has worked. Well, NAR is saying, yes, it is good to have this, but you can't do it. So I don't know if that's a dig at the DOJ or just, I'm not sure, because they're in a tricky spot too. It's just crazy, and I completely agree that this makes it worse for buyers and worse for sellers, because you're taking information away from them, right? A buyer is forced to be in a written agreement, which we'll talk about right now. Let's just go right here. Agents working with a buyer must enter into a written agreement before touring a home. Ahead of August 17th, NAR encourages all members to address form changes and prepare to educate real estate professionals and consumers about revised forms. NAR policy does not dictate terms of buyer agreements, including the type of relationship, agency, not agency, exclusive, not exclusive, or the length of the term. Those are kind of confusing for most people who don't understand real estate agency, but it's not super important. NAR has created resources to assist with implementation of the settlement terms, such as tips on clarity and emphasizing consumer choice, including our Written Buyer Agreements 101 resource available here. So what this says is that buyers have to have a written agreement with an agent before they can see a home. Now, first we thought this might include open houses. I don't think it includes open houses now. I think buyers can still go to an open house without having a written agreement. They had some kind of exclusion there. Again, it's all very confusing on why that's excluded, but I think you can still do open houses. Again, double check everything with your state and local board, because everyone's implementing these rules differently too. So what this means is, if you're a buyer looking to buy a home and you want to see a house, you have to have a written agreement with a buyer's agent before you can see that home. And in that written agreement, it will say, I agree to pay such and such commission amount. You can agree to pay your agent by the hour. There's all kinds of ways you can pay them, and that's always been the case. There's never been a set or standard way to pay your agent. It's just that this system has tended to work out better because it's less out-of-pocket cost for the buyers. A buyer might agree to pay their agent a certain amount. Well, if they're going to view and tour homes, if that seller does not pay that amount, that buyer would have to come out of pocket to pay that amount to their agent. So, maybe they're paying $10,000 on a home and the seller isn't offering to pay any of it. Now the buyer has to come out of pocket for that $10,000. Where before the seller most likely would have done it. Well, at least before, they could have known, hey, yes, this seller is paying this much or that much or offering this much to your agent. So okay, I don't have to come out of pocket. I don't have to pay any of that. Well, now you don't know unless your agent texts or calls or asks the other agent directly. And you're being forced to work with a buyer's agent to do this too. So it really just takes away information. It takes away transparency. It adds levels and levels and levels of steps that seem unnecessary to me. And that seems to be the government process in most things. And I don't understand who it's almost like they're more concerned with hurting and stopping, realtors instead of helping consumers, which should be the goal. The goal should be to help consumers, and this does not help them at all. And hopefully, who knows, maybe I'll get in trouble for saying all this. I don't know. But it's very tricky how this is going to play out. And it just adds a lot of work and confusion. And honestly, it adds a lot of opportunity for tricks and scams and pulling the rug out from people thinking one thing might happen when another can't, because nothing's in writing. You're getting texts, you're getting phone calls. Maybe there's different compensation for some buyers versus others because there's nothing in writing. I thought we were trying to go against those type of practices, and this just encourages it. So we'll see how this plays out. I don't know, how it's going to impact us. I know it will impact our listings because we can't list what we're paying for commission in it anymore. And we'll probably have a lot more calls, a lot more texts, a lot more communication having to happen before their showings or anything like that. And over time, this might drive more agents out of the business. And I know a lot of people say, oh, that's a good thing. We need less agents. Well, less agents means less competition, which means higher prices. So really, if anything, this could raise costs to consumers. There was never any standard commission before. There was never any standard pay practices before. There were all kinds of different ways agents got paid. So it doesn't change any of that. It just changes basically the transparency of paying or knowing what can or can't be paid. And here's an email I got from Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies, which is our division of real estate, which tells us what to do as well. And basically they've updated all the contracts in order to make all of these changes, because a lot of these changes basically went against Colorado law and how we were supposed to do stuff in the past. So we had to change all that. Of course, in this settlement, the big winners are definitely the lawyers, who get a substantial fee, and you've got to hire them and pay them to change all these forms, all these laws, all these different things. Change is good, and more regulation is good for people creating new forms, that's for sure. Okay, so they had to change it mid-year as well. They almost always did it the start of the year. Now they had to change it now because of all of this. All right, so it will be updated on the 15th, which it is today. Oh yeah, so all our new contracts then have to be updated today. All right, so I'm not going to go through all the forms that changed, just the contract to buy and sell real estate. And this is redlined, so it kind of crosses out what was there before and shows us what is here now. And I'm not going to go through all of it, just one really important part. But you can see every year they change these and make them more complicated to protect consumers. And what it does is just confuses everybody. Now, there's obviously some things that need to be in a contract, like dates and price and concessions and different things. Hopefully I'm allowed to say concessions, sorry. But there's so many other things. And this is one reason why there are real estate agents, because we are given a limited amount of authority to practice law by going over contracts and using state-approved forms like this. And we have to take classes every year to learn the changes and figure out what's going on. And me as a broker also have more responsibility too. So again, I'm not going to go over all of these changes and everything. I'm just going to go to the most important one here. 29, and maybe, there we go. Okay, 29. Buyer's brokerage firm compensation. Buyer's brokerage firm's compensation will be paid at closing as follows: % of the purchase price or dollars by seller. So this is brand new. We were never allowed in Colorado to list commission, or we were highly discouraged, I should say, to list any kind of commissions in the contract before. We were supposed to have a separate listing agreement, which you still have, or something else outside the contract to talk about commissions. Now it is in the contract. So this idea that you can't pay a commission anymore is completely false according to Colorado contracts, because it's literally in the contract now saying what the buyer's firm compensation will be. So percent of purchase price or dollar amount by seller. Buyer's brokerage firm is an intended third-party beneficiary under this provision only. The amount paid by seller under this provision is in addition to any other amount seller is paying on behalf of buyer elsewhere in this contract. Percent of the purchase price or by buyer pursuant to a separate agreement between buyer and buyer's brokerage firm. This amount may be modified between buyer and buyer's brokerage firm outside this contract. So that option says the buyer is paying the commission directly, pretty much, if I get this correct. Again, always talk to a lawyer, attorney about specific legal items, but I believe that one is saying, okay, the buyer is paying it, not the seller. Again, this just adds so much confusion and things that agents will be going through. And then the third option is percent of purchase price or dollar amount by a separate agreement between buyer's brokerage firm and seller's brokerage firm. So what is the difference between that one and this first one? Buyer's brokerage firm is an intended third-party beneficiary under this provision only. Okay, the amount paid by seller in this provision is in addition to any amount seller is paying on behalf of buyer elsewhere. By a separate agreement between buyer's brokerage firm and seller's brokerage firm. So there's a separate agreement for this third one? Again, we're definitely need clarification on the difference between those two. But basically my point here is you are allowed to pay a commission still. It's right here in the state contract. It's right here to add it. There's multiple options to do it. We just can't say how much the seller is willing to pay unless you text or call directly, from my understanding. You just can't have it in writing anywhere as an offer of compensation. So again, the transparency is a lot less than it was before. And there still is, if we scroll down here, how you're working with a buyer's agent. But before, it would say who is to be paid. The buyer's firm's compensation is to be paid by listing brokerage firm, buyer, other. That's crossed out, and you have to just use the one above to do that. So, and then below here, they still say the compensation or commission is paid by seller, buyer, etc. So, I mean, we still had these options before for the buyer to pay it, the seller to pay it, however you want to do it. And the options really haven't changed that much from this contract. It's just the ability to offer those compensations and commissions has changed significantly. And of course, the requirement that buyers are signed up with a buyer's agent now. Okay, finally, this is from our MLS system here in Northern Colorado. Again, there's a few different MLS systems throughout the state. And they go over that compensation can't be in the MLS again. IRIS is removing any compensation fields and any mentions of it. The new rules go in effect today. They'll remove all compensation information from expired, withdrawn, sold listings as well. So they aren't even going to leave it in the old ones. And then all of the ones now will be identified, warned. I've heard of other states already fining agents for mentioning anything about them starting in August 1st, but ours is doing today. So this says all compensation for active coming soon listings, commission, bonus, referral fee, etc. removed. All numerical values relating to concessions. Seller is offering a $5,000 paint and carpet allowance. Turns into seller is offering a paint and carpet allowance. I have no idea why they're doing that. I don't remember that being part of the settlement, but I guess they're being extra careful. Detailed numerical financial information like assumable loan balances and rates, 5% loan, or detailed buy-town information, 321. The one exception is earnest money amounts, which are part of the contract. So we can still leave earnest money amounts in there. Basically, everything else is gone. So you can now say assumable VA loan with no rates or term information, basic financing options, but no detailed information at all. So you can't mention builder concessions or buy downs. You can't mention the interest rate. You can't mention the loan balance. You can't mention a 2-1 loan pay down. Commissions are allowed. No concessions are allowed, sorry, but no numerical values. So that's it. Basically, we're just removing as much useful information as we can for buyers and sellers. All right. That's what the changes are. That's how we will navigate. Basically, it's just going to be through word of mouth and phone calls. And I guess text messages about what is happening and what will be offered and not offered. And it's funny because we've always been taught over and over again in real estate, everything needs to be in writing. Everything needs to be in writing. Everything needs to be in writing because real estate's a big deal. Houses are very expensive. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of way people can get scammed and have deals change and lose tons of money. And that's why everything is supposed to be in writing. And now it's kind of like we're going backwards where we don't want things in writing. And in my opinion, that can definitely cause some issues down the road. All right, so those are the changes here in Colorado. We'll see how, we've got a few houses listed now. I guess we'll see how all this plays out and works out and how the system adapts to everything. All right, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. If I got anything wrong, please correct me. This has been an ongoing situation. I've said things in the past about open houses and different things that turned out to not be correct, but we also didn't have all the information or know what was going on back then as well. So now we're starting to get a much clearer picture of how this all is going to work out.